Hello everybody, welcome back to Jubes & Co. with me, Michelle Dewberry, Laila Cunningham and Michael Gove. Leslie, one of my viewers, makes an interesting point. I've never thought about this one, I've got to tell you. Just talking there about the Maccabi Tel Aviv match, he points out, the European Athletics Championships this year are going to be hosted in Birmingham. They say that Israel's going to take part, so how will that work? Interesting point, I've got to say. Many of you getting in touch and saying, Michelle, none of you are talking about the extortionate price that soft drinks currently cost in the pubs. That is something that many of you need to tackle. But if you're a pub owner, you'll be saying, hang on a minute, Michelle, it's not us, it's the overheads. I can hear both sides of that story. Look, I want to cut to the chase with you. The Tories are getting a huge amount of blame for things at this moment in time. Many of you will be current or former Tory members. You might have voted for them, you might want to vote for them going forward. According to many, the Tories completely failed Britain. Did you?
No, I think there are some things, of course, that over the course of the last 14 years, the Conservatives got wrong. Some things that we should have done that we didn't. But I think overall, it was a record of achievement against the odds. I think that, to take one area in which I'm particularly interested, education, at the end of those 14 years, schools in England, because, of course, we didn't control what happened in education in Wales or Scotland, schools in England were the best in the Western world.
Michael, you said it was, sorry, just to quote you, a record achievement against the odds?
A record of achievement against the odds,
You know what was a record was your loss in the last election. And that wasn't because of record achievements, that was because of record failures. I can assure you that. The Conservatives managed the impossible. They had the highest tax burden since World War II, despite always claiming to be the party of low tax. We had migration in the millions coming in, despite promising it in the thousands. Law and order, you shut down magistrates' courts, cut police, crime was rampant. Companies were leaving in droves. You removed non-dom just to beat Labour, even though you knew it would be an economic disaster for the country. Your party served the party for 14 years and didn't serve the country. And that's why it wasn't record achievement. It was a record failure, and that you were taught a lesson at the polls. Well, not a hard enough lesson, in my opinion.
I think it was probably a pretty tough lesson, and it's certainly the case that we lost a lot of talented people at that election, but of course the electorate are always right. Only two things that I would say. The first is that, of course, Laila, you were elected in 2022 as a Conservative and left the Conservatives. I completely understand, respect that decision, in 2025. So there you were, having joined us, 12 years in, presumably.
I joined you when I was very young. My mother...
But you stood for election as a councillor in 2022.
Because there was no alternative at that time. Reform didn't exist.
Fair enough.
This interruption is brought to you by ExpressVPN and their New Year deal. New Year, new VPN. And a huge saving of up to 80% if you act now. You're busy planning how to get in shape, but the hackers are planning how to get into your accounts. ExpressVPN locks down your connection so you can start the year protecting your data. This offer ends on the 7th of January, so scan the QR code or click the link in the description now.
But at that point, if we were such a crew of incompetence, I'm surprised that you wanted to carry the Conservative banner. And it wasn't until after the general election in 2024 that you chose to leave. Now, there are lots of things that you say with which I agree, and I admire both your record as a councillor and your courage in standing for Mayor of London. I think there are a number of exciting things that you've said. So I don't mean to make this point about you as an individual.
So you hold it against me for ever being a Tory?
Certainly not. Quite the opposite. And I think that some of the points that you make are fair, but I think it's also important to be balanced and to recognise that, for example, the Conservatives inherited a tough economic situation, and the Conservatives created more than 1 million jobs in office, and were also responsible for having the most vibrant tech sector in Europe. The Conservatives were responsible for the education transformation that I just mentioned. The Conservatives were also responsible for dealing with a pandemic, and of course there's vigorous debate about how effective each individual country was, but we had the most generous system of support for people
which caused the highest inflation. That generous support that you gave, that Rishi said, I'm giving, that free support was paid for and is still being paid for by the taxpayer.
Of course it was, but it was also...
That's why we suffer record inflation. Was not the right...
Inflation was coming down under the Conservatives at the end of their time in government.
But you treated the Bank of England like a cash machine. It was printing money like there's no tomorrow. tomorrow, chasing goods that didn't exist,
Well,
jobs that didn't exist. And it's thanks to the Conservatives that we had such high inflation for such a long time.
I would firstly say that there are questions about quantitative easing, what the Bank of England did in order to deal with the debt situation. But the second thing that I would say is that if you compare the economic performance of the UK relative to other countries, neighbours and comparator countries, then Britain did incredibly well. It's also the case that the potential to do even better was delivered by the Conservatives, because we wouldn't have had the Brexit that people voted for
unless didn't implement Brexit.
Yes, we did. And we wouldn't have had Brexit.
You betrayed Brexit big time. You didn't deregulate. Kemi couldn't deregulate. She was in charge of it. She took away 400 regulations. There were thousands. We wanted a bonfire of regulations. She said it was too hard, and you know it. And
I
did not get Singapore on the Thames.
Firstly, we wouldn't have had Brexit if it hadn't been for the Conservatives leading
the
campaign.
And thanks to the Tories, Brexit's being called a failure because you didn't implement it.
Thanks for your support during the campaign. It was much appreciated. The second thing, though, that I would say is that we already have made a significant change under the Conservatives as a result of Brexit in a huge number of areas, from how we regulate the tech sector to the prospect of making sure that we have a different approach to how we support our farmers. The challenge now is Labour attempting to undo that. And one of the concerns that I have is that if people who support Brexit, which I believe you do, now talk it down, say it's a failure, you're unwittingly doing the job that Labour want to do by making people despair about this country's capacity to actually achieve great things.
That's what you did. You did not implement Brexit people wanted control at the borders. We got even more people in. There was no control. We wanted deregulation. We got more regulation. Hang on. And you talk about the tech sector. One of our biggest unicorns, Revolut, left this country under your government. You know why? Too much regulation. You know where they went? France.
Well,
that was under the Tories. It's not by chance. It's because you had people in your government that did not believe in Brexit or didn't have the political will to see it through. And now Brexit is being blamed when actually it was the implementation by the Tories.
I think it is striking that the only reason that we won the Brexit campaign, that we were able to deliver it, was because of Conservative leadership, because of what Boris Johnson and others did. They were the people who delivered that 52% vote. And then secondly, in the aftermath of that, the changes...
I think Nigel Farage played a big deal in that. I don't think you get to rewrite history. And the only reason why Boris won is because Nigel Farage stood down quite a few candidates. In the hope that you wouldn't betray Brexit, but you did.
In both areas. Well, I was going to say there that in 2022, when you stood as a Conservative candidate, Boris was the Prime Minister. If you felt that he was betraying Brexit, why did you stand?
Quick question.
Because I stood for my area, for my community.
For both of you.
Crime was rampant because the Tories left.
Hang on, excuse me. If the Tories are so bad, why is Reform UK filling themselves full of them?
I can't answer that.
And would you ever join Reform UK?
No. I admire them from outside, but no, I'm a Tory. And again, as Laila's pointed out, my dear friend, my dear friend,
for your contribution, gents. Gents, panel, both of you, and also thank you to you at home. That's all I've got time for tonight.